Hello and welcome to the WorkJoy Jam podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by the fabulous Leon Smith, and Leon is the head of men's tennis and the Davis Cup captain for the Great Britain tennis team. And if you're an avid tennis fan, you will probably have heard of Leon before. Leon is an incredible leader. I was lucky enough to work with him and witness his leadership firsthand when I worked for the Lawn Tennis Association. And I really wanted Leon to come in and share some of the things that he does around the squads that he creates and how he leads with joy in mind. And some of the things that Leon talks about in this episode are just really simple things that you can think about that you can do. And it's a real practical example of taking something and doing your best with it and making great things happen. I really like when he talks about the fact that no one is ever going to give you everything on a plate. It's so true, and that you have to roll up your sleeves, you've got to do the hard work, and you've got to be having the passion and really be willing to learn. And that's such a great mindset to go into life and into work with. I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Leon. I know I really did. Hello and welcome to the WorkJoy Jam. In this episode, we are joined by the fabulous Leon Smith, and he's going to introduce himself in a moment. I'm really excited about this conversation. I was lucky enough to work with Leon for a few years and always been inspired by him and his approach to teamwork, to leadership. So Leon, over to you. We would love to hear your story so far.
Well, my name is Leon Smith. I'm currently head of men's tennis at the Lawn Tennis Association, as well as being the Great Britain Davis Cup captain. If I wind back the clock, I started out younger years playing tennis. I was always, maybe through my sort of teenage years, one of the sort of better kids in Scotland. And then I got to the end of my teenage years, end of school, and realised that I wasn't good enough to be a professional tennis player. And because I've been playing so much tennis, I'd probably sacrificed a lot of the educational and academic requirements to go on to university. So my choice was at 17, 18 years old to go into coaching. And I've been doing that ever since. And in the early days, it was very much grassroots coaching, working a lot with sort of beginner level, foundation level, but I absolutely loved it. It gave me a good grounding. And as the years progressed, I got more and more opportunities to work with better players. I was developing good juniors myself as a coach. And I guess when I was in my early 20s, I got that sort of lucky moment, lucky break, opportunity, whatever you want to call it. And it was Judy Murray, Andy Murray's mother, that approached me to see if I would do some work with her 12-year-old son, Andy. And I did a few trial sessions in Dunblane and Stirling, and we got on really well. And that's kind of where my sort of journey into more of the performance and therefore afterwards professional tennis started. I worked with Andy for about six, 7 years. And then after that, I started work for the Lawn Tennis Association in around 2004. I had different roles, different positions. And I'd gained a bit more experience and was given an amazing opportunity in 2010 by the LTA to step in as Davis Cup captain and head of men's tennis, which I was very much surprised with at the time. I thought there was a list as long as my arm that could have been better prepared than me to do it, but I'm absolutely delighted that I decided in the end to go for it and take that challenge on. From 2010, if we look at Davis Cup in particular, we were 44, 45 ranked team in the world. 5 years later, we ended up being number one team in the world, and more importantly, winning the whole Davis Cup, which is the World Cup of tennis, for the first time in 79 years. And it will be no doubt the proudest career moment of my life, and something that I'll always look back on with amazing memories. Since then, I've continued in the role. We've continued to have good success in Davis Cup. Even more recently, last year in the finals, we made the semi-finals, as we have done twice since winning it. and I'm continuing the roles to this day.
Brilliant. Thank you. And it's such a great story of yours to take something that was your passion as a youngster that you worked on, and then to work through coaching at, real grassroots, developing young players level. And then that amazing moment when you suddenly, and you can only see this, can't you, in reverse. You can't see it when you're there, taking on a player like Andy Murray when he's 12 years old. And then suddenly you see where Andy Murray has got to since then. And almost you would never have been able to predict that moment would happen in your career, right? You couldn't have seen that happening.
No, I mean, so many things. I mean, it when you're in that moment, especially when you're, I was really young when I started with a young Andy Murray. I was in my early 20s. I didn't really know what was going on, and I just brought some qualities that I've tried to keep with throughout all my coaching or leadership, which is trying to get the best out of people, motivate, keep it fun, keep the enjoyment high, and learn and try and learn. And I had to really learn at that time.
Yeah.
To be able to keep up with the pace of that journey. Andy was accelerating so quickly, and he was winning every world championships at every age and stage, and you're just soaking in everything, because I hadn't been through that myself as a player or as a coach. So that it was just, I was absorbing everything. But that's where your attitude to everything's got to be so spot on that you're ready to take that journey on. But if you fast forwards from there, like you say, there's no chance I would have thought it'd be, never mind being Davis Cup captain, but a winning Davis Cup captain. Would never have predicted that when I think about the start of my coaching journey.
Yeah, and it is so, you have a career of so many firsts there, don't you? And kind of being that person who's been asked to do that big job. And it sounded like you didn't necessarily feel like you were ready for it, but kind of really jumped in and went for it with, all of the passion that you bring to it.
Yeah, I was really unsure at the start. I said no when I was first asked by Roger Draper and Stephen Martins, who were CEO and technical director at the LT at the time, and two people I owe, an awful lot to for giving the opportunity. But I said no because I was definitely in fear. I was worried about what people were going to think, whether that was players, whether it was the coaching world, and even the media, for sure, because tennis is a prominent sport, and we have a big tennis media fraternity, and it was definitely something that I wondered what people were going to say, and that's why that probably stopped me in the first instance. I wasn't thick-skinned at the time either. I hadn't built that up yet. I have now, but I'm pleased I went to speak to a few people that I really trusted their judgment and had been a lot more experienced than me, and they said, look, the team is at the lowest ebb possible. It should be better. They've got players that just aren't performing where they should be. You can coach, Leon. You might not have the most experience in the world or been there and done it and got the t-shirt, but this is where you can start and go and motivate them, go and learn, go and develop some other things, do it your way, and surround yourself with people that can fill in the gaps that you don't have. And for me, that made a huge amount of sense. A huge amount, and I'm glad I went back and said yes, and they hadn't offered it to someone by that point.
I think the nation of Great Britain is glad you did as well with what you managed to achieve there. It's really interesting, and we'll come on to kind of the team around you, the squads that you built, and how you made it happen in a moment. But one thing I'm really curious about is this idea that there were obviously people who could see the talent in yourself and what you could bring and how you might go about building the team and making it successful from where it was, but perhaps you weren't ready to see the talent in yourself yet.
I think that's very, very fair way of putting it. When you're starting off I'll be interested what you think on this one. But when I was starting off on that journey, I didn't have much credibility. I wasn't well known, so you have to really you got to shout a little bit louder, and you've got to be heard a little bit more without being forceful, without getting under people's skin. So you got to bring your people skills, and you have to show, because otherwise you won't get noticed, because people aren't going to ask you. There's, I don't know if that's the same. I've always worked in tennis, so it's a very narrow industry, I would imagine. I don't know what it's like elsewhere, but I, had to show and really put myself out there more than if people had been a very good player, for example. They didn't have to as much. I had to.
Yeah, you didn't have your name or the reputation or the slight fame that some people have. And I think I work in many different organizations, different industries. And one thing I find is that when people are on their journey towards leadership, the idea that you kind of have to be known and you have to have the right network and the right people have to be shouting and sponsoring you and you have to get your name out there and a reputation. All of those things exist across most industries. There isn't very many where you don't have to make an effort in that space and you don't have to make sure your voice is heard and that you build yourself and that you have the people backing you in your corner. So definitely I see it work across many different like working worlds that really applies.
No, well, at least I'm not the only one then.
You're not the only one. No, and this is such an interesting part though. So many people feel quite alone in that space and feel like it's only them versus everyone else has suddenly got some magic ingredient that makes it happen. And actually, most people in the world really have to work at it. So
I think that's
it's
it.
definitely not you.
I think that's it. It's when all said and done, that is the fundamental, isn't it? You have to roll your sleeves. No one's gonna give you anything on a plate. And people say it all the time, but it's true. You got to roll your sleeves up and you got to work hard and you got a great passion. You got to be willing to learn. All those fundamentals ring true. I see it all the time. I see it every day. I'm lucky to be around some exceptional people in their chosen sport, whether that's Andy Murray, Joanna Konta. I see them every day. And every day they work hard. They bring a work ethic. They bring a passion and desire. It doesn't matter how much they've already achieved. You see it in them, and those fundamentals you need at every stage.
Yeah, and it's not something that you achieve and then you're done. You actually have to keep working at it. There's another level and another consideration and more hard work to do. So thinking about this and your philosophy and how you do things, obviously you took on this and people in the wider world, if they're tennis fans or if they know you or, anyone who read a paper when the Davis Cup team won, they will have seen you in photos and they will have seen the team winning. And what people see out in the big wide world is this amazing, glamorous shot of everyone with the biggest trophy in the world. Going, look at this amazing achievement. It's been so many years since the team last managed to do it. But what they don't see necessarily is the journey that got you there. And I'd be really interested to know, really focusing maybe on kind of the team you put around it, the squad you had. How do you lead a team to that level of success from where they were to where you got to? What was your method? And as it's the WorkJoy podcast, how did you use joy and happiness and fun stuff to help make that happen?
It's a good question. I mean, there's many things that will have gone into it, but if I try and you're making me reflect now, which is good. But when I do think back to when I started, I was passionate but inexperienced. So I had a little bit of time actually. If you think about the timeline, I actually got the role itself in like April, okay, and we didn't actually have our first match until July. So I had a bit of a period of time to go out and actually gain a bit more insight. So I spent that first couple of months traveling a lot. Everyone thought I was just doing it to jet off to all these nice places. There was a purpose behind it, I promise. But I wanted to go and speak to the players who'd been part of the team, previously. I wanted to speak to the coaches, personal coaches of players been involved, people that had been in the previous support staff setup, coaching team, etc. And just try to gauge as much as possible because a lot of good stuff had happened. Sometimes good things happen and results don't happen. That's also, so it's not all bad at all. And when I was, speaking to people and gaining a lot of feedback, I could tell there was a lot of good things going on, but for whatever reason, they weren't winning. They dropped down really, really low in the competition. So the job then is to try and figure out why, take the good bits, and then make sure you understand what areas we could develop further. And one of when I listened to everybody, one of the key things were, could we know our own players better? Could we have better relationships with them? Could we understand them as people a bit more, and not just coming into the team and try and win a tennis match? Try and actually bond a little bit closer with them. So the first thing was getting really good dialogue, communication, spending time, building up a lot of trust with the players. The other thing is to make sure that there was some areas that we could do better by bringing in other people other than tennis coaches. So, making sure that we had, whether it was good nutrition, we actually had a doubles coach at the time, a guy called Louis Caillé, whilst as a tennis coach, maybe wasn't being utilized as much, and yet doubles played a huge part in our event. And yet that expertise maybe wasn't being tapped into for whatever reason, but I wanted it because he was much better coaching doubles than me. Therefore, that's good for the team. I also looked at getting the right characters to help in the support team and making sure, because you've talked about joy and enjoyment and fun. That is one of my definite key coaching principles. Making sure the environment is fun, motivational. We energize the players, energize the staff, and a lot of effort goes into that. It's not forgotten, and that could be things, whether it's team building, whether it's what a room looks like, what a locker room looks like, what a stadium looks like, team uniform looks like. Everything was to energize and feel great about being in this environment. So those were, and from that, the culture starts to shift. There's those things you put in place, which seem so obvious, but there's sometimes obvious things can be left behind. You start looking at some of the things you maybe layer on afterwards. In getting that order of like, what can really make a great team is, does everyone get on well? That helps. They respect, trust, care about each other. They don't necessarily always have to be the best of friends, but there's that trust. And we're lucky in our team. Most of it has been actually very close friendships. And bringing good work ethic, bringing high levels of motivation, always giving your best, always, whether that's you on the match court or whether that was you on the support bench, always give your effort, best effort. And we really kept those fundamentals at the start, and we got those, I think we got those right. And whether that directly correlated to players starting to win more, I hope so, because they did start to win more, and they started to get some wins against far higher ranked players, which is the barometer. Do you get upsets? Do you always beat the players you should beat? And they were starting to do that, and that's when we started to get some momentum.
Great. And it's so easy, isn't it, to forget that the basic stuff, the fundamentals, the real core of teamwork is really important. And I think we often, in business and in sport and in all kinds of different situations, even in our friendship groups, sometimes we forget that doesn't always happen by magic and naturally. Sometimes you have to find a way of focusing your attention on something within that to make it more successful. Because it sounds like you did actually have good friendships amongst the players, but maybe they didn't have the right environment or the right support or some of the other things that were really important to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do believe that. I mean, the camaraderie amongst a group of individuals that are brought together to operate as a team is important. As I say, it doesn't always have to be like a high-fiving, best of friends situation. It doesn't have to be, but it should be an energized environment. People understand how they're contributing to the overall objective of the team. Everyone should know where we're going to go, where are we trying to get to, and everyone has a real feeling of value within that. Whether that's in my situation, that's in sport, that's whether it's a player, whether it's a coach, or whether it's a doctor, a physio, a racket stringer, whoever it is, everyone understands the role that they play, and everyone very much feels part of it. And it should be a feeling of an equal footing. Yes, there's always going to be natural leadership within it, or there's always going to be a star player in it, but it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel that way. It feels that we're all in it together. And one of the first things I did actually in my very first tie, I always remember being very surprised in my first tie at how the environment wasn't that inspiring. Like, I didn't think maybe the stadium was dressed like it should be. It didn't feel like, wow, we're playing for Great Britain. I remember our locker room was like cardboard boxes where players were maybe pulling the t-shirts out of it to put them on. I was like, whoa, this should be feeling way more special. You're taking time out of your individual competitive weeks to come together to play for Great Britain. This should feel more special than what you're used to every week. And that was I invested a lot of time and energy with others to make sure we got that feeling. But I also wrote something down in terms of where we wanted to get to, just to give a sense. And I didn't really know what it meant at the time. I didn't, but I had a direction that I wanted to go in. How we were going to do that, we started mastering as the months and years moved on. But I wrote on a flip chart these words, which were what we were going to be. It was going to be a well-prepared team on a journey back to the World Group, because it was going to take us being, I underlined prepared, because that meant that everyone understand that we're going to prepare really well, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, but also how we look at our opponents. We're going to get good information. So people could understood that part of it. Okay. And then team was written in capital letters. So everyone knew, okay, I get it. If I'm going to be part of this, I need to be a good teammate. And I put journey on there because I knew it was going to take some time. Everything takes some time. You can't just click your finger and expect things to transform overnight. It was going to take time. So I put the journey on there to say, it's okay, we have time, and we're going to be in this together for a long time, but it starts now. And the whole point was to get back to the World Group. So they knew they had somewhere to get to. And that formed a bit of a narrative of how we would operate.
Great. And it's really interesting. I kind of wrote down there what you were saying about a well-prepared team on a journey back to the World Group. Is, for me, the preparation really comes back to that point of you have to put the hard yards in, you have to put the work in. It's not just going to miraculously change overnight, and that's the part of the journey. But also really focusing on that team, the team ethic, the team effort, how people work together, how you bring people in. And one of the things I was just reflecting on from what you said earlier is this idea that you were new to it. You hadn't done it before. It was a new thing. You were learning as you go. You were thinking about, how do you make this happen? And a lot of people in that position feel a need, or behave in a way that makes them feel like they have to do it all. They have to be expert at everything, and they have to lead it all. And it sounds like you managed to resist the urge to try and do everything, and to really focus on the squad that you put together to help make this happen, to make the team and that feeling of the team all being equal, even if there are some stars within it. How did you do that? How did you find the right people and gather that squad together that really made the magic happen?
I think the first thing is, it never felt like oh, what an opportunity for me, I'm going to go on this crusade and everyone's going to think I'm amazing. I genuinely, that's never how I felt about things at all. I just wanted our team to do very well and be a success. So when your finger's on that pulse, you can take a step back and go, okay. And I think it helped that the fact that I wasn't sure that was the right. I knew I'd been given an amazing opportunity. I was a curveball. So my feet were very much grounded, and it allowed me to go stock check of, right, what bits can I bring to this, and what bits do I really need to get help in order to help the team. And there was getting a blend. You definitely need your expertise, because it can't all just be young, enthusiastic and passionate individuals. That is a massive part of it, but you're going to need a few people who've been around the block a few times. And I had certainly one or two of them. We had a doubles coach I mentioned before, who's vastly experienced, in his 60s, has won everything in the sport as a coach. And he was brilliant, because I knew that he would tell me straight. He's brilliant that way, very straight talking to me in a good way. He would take me to the side and say, look, I think you've got to think about this a little bit more, or have you thought about doing this? And the way you spoke to them, maybe you could change that a little bit. He was brilliant and is brilliant, still part of it, Louis. And I needed that, but then I also needed people that were going to go on a journey as well, that had a lot of, if you need to bring energy, if you really believe that by energizing people you're going to get better performance, which I do, then you get the people that have got the energy, got the energy and the ability to energize others. And I can think of a guy, Matt Little, who's our strength conditioning coach, physical trainer, who's in our team, who's also doubles as the trainer for Andy Murray. He has got this amazing ability to make people laugh, smile, work hard, motivate, but just amazing. So is a guy, Colin Beecher, who's part of the team. They have amazing people social skills. So when you think about in an individual sport, which we work in, to galvanize, you've got to put effort into that, and it can't just be I think I'm good at that, but you can't do it alone. It takes so much to fill a room with energy and then keep it there and keep going back, especially after setbacks or losses. And you got to pick yourself back up. It takes a collective effort to keep that energy up.
Definitely, and having experienced Matt Little when I was in the audience, in the crowd,
he was like a cheerleader, wasn't he?
He's honestly, like the Energizer Bunny, but like with double amounts of energy within him. And he didn't stop once. It was like I think he stood up for every single point and clapped for every single point on a 3-day full-on thing. And you think, do you know what? How amazing does having a cheerleader like that in your court make you feel when you're there?
But what's also really important
out?
is that other people, if you don't do it, you notice yourself not doing it. So you need to have people you need some Pied Pipers to start. So a culture of, okay, I'm maybe not playing in that match. And we always have a thing that, when we do our team huddle before we go out, we've done it for literally a decade now since I've done this job, is, the bench, the team bench that sit behind the court that are supporting. And that's full of players, coaches, support staff like physio, doctor. They will be as physically and emotionally spent as the player on the court.
Yeah.
I can tell that all their voices are gone. It's like Matt literally talked about. We do ask them to stand up and sit down every single point to keep the energy. So when the player looks over, they see it. That we're with you. We're really behind you. There's a togetherness. And he said to me, Matt Little, he said, in which other environment would you ask someone to stand up and sit down and scream over and over again for about 10 hours in a day? You imagine how someone felt if you just did that. And that's how they feel. And that's one of the things that we would be most proud of as a team. Is I think we'd have the best support bench across any other team.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's catching, isn't it? Like positive energy is really catching. So when I was in the crowd there, I remember that Matt would do it and he would turn around and make the whole crowd, the GB crowd, stand up and clap and scream and sing. There were drums and, all these kind of different things to get people feeling it. And that it's joyous, isn't it? When you hear a room of, a massive stadium of people screaming for you.
It is.
That's such a great thing.
It's an amazing feeling for everyone. And look, it's great when everyone's winning. Everyone gets fired up and can bring energy. But it's also when it's either a tight moment or if you're going through a sticky patch, you're not winning in a match, then it can go flat. And yes, the player always has responsibilities out there to bring energy, but you've also got to stoke the fire as well. You've got to try and help them find that. Especially over the course of some of the matches we've been involved in. One match goes on for it has exceeded 5 hours. Some of the matches, and we're supporting 2 matches a day in the old format, what we were doing in Davis Cup, and that was sometimes 10, 11-hour days of support. It's very different to like a football match, 45 minutes. This is like 10, 11 hours. You've got to keep going. It's a huge amount of focus around energy and energizing. So. But one of the key things is that when you've been there, Beth, in the stands watching, and I don't think it was always like that, and that's the bit I look back at. It takes time, and you bring in the right people with those values and those behaviors, and it's infectious if you have enough. And that's why it's not one person's job. It doesn't matter how much energy I've got. That's not enough. You need more. You need a support and a team effort to get everyone going, and then it starts to infiltrate throughout, and people just get that's who we are. It becomes how to be and how we are. That's what it ends up being. And if you don't do it, it doesn't feel normal. If you're someone that's low energy or a bit of an energy sap, you won't fit in. It won't be tolerated because we are going with energy.
Yeah, and you set the standard for the behaviours that are acceptable within the team, and you really, really stick to that versus saying, "Oh, it's okay because they're really good at this. They can be non-energetic." Like, no, actually, this is a really, really important part of what we do. And
It is, Beth, and I've
yeah,
had to say to a few players, because I get it as well when it's an individual sport, that it might not be their personality, and I also
yeah,
get that. But you're not, you're never asking them to do something that they can't be, or would knock their own psyche out, or knock their own performance out by being something they're not. But it's doing enough to be in line with the values of the team, and everyone has a different scale of what that might look like. Some are like
yeah,
we've talked about the guy Matt Little. He's off the charts in terms of what he can do. Not not everyone can be like that, but you've got to be enough to show you're in it and understand it. And I've had to take a couple of players aside and say, look, I know this is, you're not playing in this match, and normally you'd be, headphones on in a locker, just doing your own thing, mind your own business. But I actually need you on the bench, and I need to give your teammate who's going out now everything. Please give them support, because it will make such a difference if they see you supporting them. And we've got no one, for me, we've got Andy Murray's greatest sports people that have come out of Great Britain. When he's not playing it, he's on the side of the court, he's going bananas for the player that's playing. If he's
yeah.
doing it, I can tell you, every player will start doing it when your superstar supports the
Yeah.
way he does from the side of the court.
And you've got to remember that humans are built for connection. Like, we were built to be
Mm.
part of a tribe, part of a team, part of a squad. And actually, that feeling when you can get it right and you can feel that support from everybody, no matter what their status is. So, if you're talking about this in the organizational context, Andy Murray might be like the star of the business, be like the CEO or somebody
Mm-hmm.
really senior, and the face of the organization. But actually, this happens everywhere. And how do you find that way of just setting the standard of what it is? And you led with enthusiasm and energy and fun and making people feel special, such an important thing to do, and make the environment right and make people want to do their best. And if you can set all of those things up, obviously through your example here, you have made it happen. And what I'm really interested to talk about next is to kind of go on to so this is how you set it all up. You got it going, you were working through it, you'd set that goal of getting back into the world group. At what point did it transition to, we're actually on a path to winning this thing? And how did you kind of give that extra to make that bit happen, to not just achieve where you thought you might get to, but to really be the winners?
Yeah, it's I actually sometimes find this quite difficult to pinpoint. I mean, a moment in time where we started to get a lot of confidence. I mean, winning helps, but we won a lot at the start because we really should have been winning. We got a lot of momentum, and it feels good to win. But when we started to play teams that were quite a bit better than us,
Yeah.
that's when the turning point came. We beat one team, Slovakia, and they had two players ranked about 60, 70 in the world. And our two players that played in singles were ranked about 300. And we won that match, and people went, oh, wow, that's a big upset. That feels good. And we ended up doing the same, because a lot of the ties weren't played with Andy Murray either. He was off rightly trying to win Grand Slams, which he did during that time.
Yeah.
And it was about 2013, we played against a very strong Russia team, and Andy couldn't play. Again, with this massive ranking deficit to make up, and our players, it was James Ward and Dan Evans at the time, unbelievable wins to get us through, like astonishing wins. And it was at that time, I remember Andy calling us immediately afterwards, when we were in the locker room, called my phone, and you could tell he was so thrilled for the players and the team. And he's like, look, I hope I can still get in this team when, for the next tie. And of course, yes, you can, Andy, you're in. And that was our world group. He joined us again after that. I think it almost rubber stamped that things were going the right way, and other players had proved themselves. And he saw things were on the right track, and that was important, because you sometimes need that reference point from someone of that ilk, that standing, to go, yeah, okay, and I really, really, really want to be a part of this now, because we have a chance of also winning it now. So I think it was at that moment in 2014 we kind of thought, okay, we actually in 2013 then we beat Croatia. Andy was part of the team. We moved into 2014 back in the World Group for the first time in like 6 years, and that's when our journey started. We actually in 2014 we beat USA in San Diego, and again we had another really good win. James Ward was 200 in the world, beat a guy Sam Querrey who was like 30 in the world. I was like, wow, that's a good win. And Andy played again. We won that. We actually lost in the quarterfinals that year to Italy. It was a really tough match. Andy played, but he lost to Fognini in the deciding match. But it was good for us because you asked me what did we do when we lost that match. We hadn't lost for ages. We ended up losing that match in 2014 in the quarterfinals, and it felt like a setback. And which is a good thing because we'd gone from like 45 in the world to about 9 in the world at that time, and this felt low. Losing didn't feel good. So we got together the night after we lost, me and the players, and we had a great chat about what's brought us to this point.
Yeah. To
get us from 45 in the world to 9. What do we need next year to go from 9 to 1?
Yeah.
And it was a really good chat, and I still have my notes from it. And it was about keeping the basics right. But because we'd gone so quickly, we'd tried things we'd piloted a few things. Sometimes we got a bit lost and we're doing too many things. And it was all in good intentions, but we just actually, it wasn't about necessarily some of the marginal gains we see in sport. Some of the conversation was, look, strip out some of that, go back to really thinking about what we do well, but let's pick the best bits of the marginal gains. Let's pick the best bits out that can really make a difference, such as what information can we get during a match that can really change something. Rather than doing loads and loads and loads and loads of research on opponents before we play them, that's fine. It takes hours, but it can get a bit complicated. And what's more important is what happens during the match. That's the bit that's not, because if you do all this analysis on an opponent, it's really good to have, but if the opponent's any good, they're going to mix it up on the day. They're not going to do the. So you have to have your method. So we really had a good chat about something like that. We talked about focusing on. Tapering of the week so that you're ready and very, very fresh for the actual match day. We actually did quite a lot of good. We talked about being the best prepared team. We might have prepared a bit too much on the days leading in.
Right.
So by the time it came to match day, how much have you got left in the tank? That's when it actually starts. It's not like a crash course you're trying to fill in lots and lots of hours 3-4 days before playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday of best of 5 set matches. It's long. It's about doing what's needed, what's the really most important things, but keeping it mentally tapering, physically tapering down the week so you're ready to really give it everything over the weekend. So that is my point. We had a bit of a moment in time to go, right, what got us here and what can make us go from being a good team to the best team.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because there's so much temptation and there's so many relations to actually in like business and in corporate life and in all kinds of different industries here, is that sometimes you try and put too many things in the bucket, and actually the best thing to do is to strip some stuff back and to go, let's really focus on what we're good at and our thing versus everything we could possibly do. And it sounds like, well, obviously it doesn't just sound like, it did work. And interestingly enough, that whole actually maybe resting a bit more before the matches and before the weekend and finding some space and time versus over preparing. Such an interesting way of thinking about it. And then obviously you managed to make it happen and the team won. Talk us through that winning year and how you kept that, because it's so much when you're on the road to actually winning something, which you were there's so much external pressure, isn't there? There's so much more expectation than there had been when you were in the 44th or 45th in the world versus 9th, and possibly they might actually get to the final or might get wherever you might get to. The pressure becomes so much more, and so many times in sport and in business and in everywhere, the pressure is actually what gets you versus all the work versus actually it's too much and we can't make it happen. How did you manage to keep that sense of joy and fun and enthusiasm through that pressure, through that actually we might be able to get this, we might be able to win?
I think one thing I would say, we definitely kept it. joyful. We kept it fun, and I think because pretty much the consistency, some of the support staff come and go. That's natural. And of course, the playing team can change. Obviously, Andy in the year we won it was, and his brother Jamie were absolute mainstays because they, no surprise, the following year they both got to number one in the world. One as a singles player, and one as a doubles player. So that's the easiest team sheet you can do. You put their name on it, and then the others are fighting for the places.
We'll have both number ones, please. Thanks.
Yeah, that's not a bad starting point. But what was good is that the other players who were going to make up the rest of the team had been part of things for a long time, so they understood the team. And the support staff, the coaching team, and the wider team, there was a few changes, but there was consistency. So we were good. There was a good togetherness. There was a good understanding of how we were operating. And what was really important, even we got to that year we won it, we won our first match, which took us to the quarterfinals. You have to win 4 matches in the year to win the competition. We beat USA, and it was amazing. We actually went. A lot of thought was put into where we went to, and the two Murrays, and to a much lesser extent myself. Scottish, there's not a lot of tennis gets played. Professional live tennis gets played in Scotland. It's very much southern centric in Great Britain. So we felt it was important to go to Scotland and give Andy and Jamie and the Scottish fans a chance to see them. That was the right choice as well, because it just brought a huge sense of pride and more joy again to be able to play that level of tennis in Scotland. A bit of a give back moment. So that really worked well. But I think what we maintained some of the routines and habits, good behavioural habits, such as making sure that we put in the week that we're preparing. We're going to do some fun stuff. We're going to do some team building, and we're going to do a quiz night, or we're going to go and visit a football ground, or go to a football match. We did a couple of times that year. We did stuff that was just nothing to do with tennis, and it was more to do with that side of mentally tapering, emotionally tapering, and having fun, because the amount of stress that goes on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which was our match days, is enough to fill your boots for a very long time. So the stuff before it was, we were very conscious to make sure. I mean, one of the ties, we played like crazy golf throughout the whole hotel. You had to knock the ball into the elevator, press down to level 3. There was another course there. The rest of the guests probably couldn't believe what we were doing, but it was just something. It sounds so stupid now, but it's just something to take your mind off what's about to happen. So I think that was one of the key
pressure
things.
valve.
Yeah.
So you've got all this pressure coming up. It's coming. You can get to the point of I would call it over rehearsing in kind of the arts world, but
absolutely, that's a great way of putting it.
And being there, and then actually on your performance day it's not good enough, or you can't bring it because you brought it the day before, and the day before you weren't playing against anyone you needed to win against. So there's something there about taking your mind off and being able to have some fun, and reminding yourself that there's that there is fun to be had, and then being able to focus and get in the flow and be awesome when you're
because even when you're saying that there, Beth, people can often think, oh, you're having fun, you're not taking things seriously. It's not like it at all. It's not at all like that. You can have fun whilst you're still there, still giving best effort. It just doesn't have to be. I like what you just said. I think over rehearsing is a really good way of putting it, because if you're thinking about this all the time, you are increasing the chance of overthinking, of performance anxiety. That's not to say you haven't done the work, but the work's been done before. So if you're leading into something, that ability to, you got to think about what your energy tank is like, both emotionally and physically. And if you think of it, as a petrol gauge or whatever, where is it? Where is it when you really need it? I'm not going to set off on a long journey with like not much fuel left in the tank. I've got to really think about where I am in that, and that's getting good rest, good sleep, good food. The mind feels, in a good place. And we have one, people talk about philosophy. I always, again, when people ask about philosophies, find it quite difficult to say it's this, and this, because they kind of change and a little bit of evolve. The thing about fun and motivation, that always stays, but that's more about how I am and how I deliver. But one of the philosophies that we have had in place, or is it a methodology? You can tell me afterwards. Is we go always person first,
Yeah.
performer second, and then tennis player third. And that has always remained. And we use that definitely not just at Davis Cup. I use it in my own leadership team. I use it with players in their own teams. I use it with younger players, developing players. I use it with my own family. It's the same. I go person first. How are you? How's your health? How's your well-being? How's everything at home? How's your family? If you treat the players like that, and when they come into Davis Cup, that's what we do. We check how they are as people.
And
Then, sorry, you
the
go.
human bit first. The
Yes, the
human bit first.
Human, massively. Because what's the point? If I haven't checked that, how can I get to the next stage of the performer? The performer is, in our world, like head, heart, and legs, we call it, which is the head is like your ability to focus, to concentrate, to make good tactical, strategical decisions. The heart is, are you ready to fight for every point? Are you really there to unconditionally compete? And the legs are, how physically fit are you? Are you in a good place? But you're not carrying any injuries. You're ready to last a 5-hour match if needed. So, but there's no point in going to that bit if there's something going on at home that's knocked them for 6. They're not going to be able to get them to perform. Something's going on in their life. So that's the flow of it. And then right at the end of that, if we work through the performer and they're motivated, they're ready to go, okay, right, now we might tell you where to hit your forehand in that match. Now we might tell you where to serve. But that's something that we if I was to say as a philosophy or a methodology, that's what we've managed to stick to.
It's a great philosophy to have. And again, linking it back to different businesses and different industries and different types of work, is that I honestly believe if we can get back to having a human conversation before we have a work-based conversation, before we have a this is your job-based conversation and how you can improve in your job, I think the world of work will be a much happier, more joyful place. Because you're absolutely right. How can you have a conversation with somebody about how they might need to improve something in their role if what's going on at home is taking up 99% of their brain? It's just not going to work. It's going to be a failing way of working. So it's so important. I really love to hear it in that way and described in that way. So obviously you then, as a team, went on to win.
Yeah.
And the joy of winning in itself must have been incredible. And to have like the crowd around you and, the country really, 4 countries, the whole of Great Britain behind you and being amazed and impressed and so proud. It's interesting though, because rather than talk about the winning bit, because I think we all know what winning feels like and how amazing it is what happens after that? How do you keep the joy and interest when you think, oh, we've won it now? What happens next?
Yeah, I with the support team really thought about that once the winning dust had settled, and it was 5 years ago that the winning happened, and we've had many good moments since then, but the winning moment, we had all the accolades. There's about 8 million people watching on TV. We went straight to, I think a few days later we were in Downing Street with the trophy with the Prime Minister. We won this BBC Sports Personality Team of the Year, and in there, massive, 7 or 8 million viewers again watching that thing and having to give a live speech. That was performing under pressure, I can tell you that much. We had an amazing time, but very quickly our next tie actually was planned, and it was in, I think it was February. But we'd won it in end of November, and we already knew we were playing Japan in Birmingham in mid to late February, so there wasn't that much time, and you have to go again. But the feeling was, I remember talking to people, how's this going to feel? And you end up, you make sure it still feels special. It still feels different. Maybe not better, because that's not fair, but it feels different to what they're doing every other week. So you just make sure that have we still, look around, have we got the right people? Is everyone else still as passionate as I feel, as the players feel? Once you get a yes for that, okay, that's good to go. No need to change that. Check everyone else's motivation is there. Check that the next environment is going to feel special. So we did things like, we're the winning team coming out, make sure we do something special in the first match. We had fire flaming things on the court, an amazing spectacle, light show, that sort of thing. We made sure, the hotel was right. We actually built an even better team room. It was like, wow, we had even better things that we could hang out in the team room. Better, the pool tables and the table tennis, different things going on. We did some different activities. We just had to just make sure that you're ready to go again, and it feels that you really are. But then we really didn't have an issue with that following year. We might have been actually one of my regrets, and that I really feel we should have won it 2 years running. We'd waited 79 years, and we got to the semi-finals again the following year, which was amazing. We ended up losing to Argentina. There's a 5-hour match in that one when the guy Juan Martín del Potro beat Andy in one of the most amazing Davis Cup matches of all time. And it went down to the final match. We lost. I think if we'd won it, we'd have won it 2 years in a row, which would have been an even more amazing story. But we started to get greedy. Yeah? That's the thing. We were getting good success, but I think it's the team. It's the team that you need the players to return. You need the players to keep committing to it, wanting to be part of it. And if it feels like a great environment and something they're going to enjoy, because that's what it is. They enjoy it, and that's what I always come back to. I'm sort of too long an answer for your question. I'm sorry, but you're making me think about it. I go back to making sure it's a really uplifting environment. Then they'll want to come back into it. It's a good break from what they do normally, to come back into something that really lifts them.
Yeah, it really sounds like that, going back to your core principles of what is this about, and not resting on your laurels and going, oh, hang on, we're the winners now. We can just kind of make it happen, or just glide along and assume that everything will be great. It's like, actually, no, we need to make it special. We still need to make it feel great. It's not that we're winners forever now. That's we've done it, but we need to keep working. And another example, isn't it, of how the hard work just still has to continue. It doesn't stop just because you've won.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't stop. And you have to remember as well, we're dealing. Players they're doing this week in, week out. They're trying to win every week. They want to win. They want to be successful. So they're already a very motivated group of individuals that we're harnessing into a team. And I'm sure that's the same in every. There's similarities across different industries, but in ours, they want the opportunity to showcase what they can do. They like playing in front of crowds. That motivates them. There's a whole, it never stops. And I've yet to be part of a Davis Cup week where it's felt a bit flat. I was aware of one moment. We were playing Uzbekistan about 2-3 years ago, I think it was, and that was a playoff match to get into a new format of the finals. But it was a tough sell. They didn't have any star name players, and we were playing back in Glasgow. And, Andy wasn't playing. We had a few other players out. We could tell it was going to be quite tough to sell tickets. I was kind of like, whoa. There was a bit of a feeling of this could be a little bit flat for the first time. So we tried to look at a different angle to put things in the week that would just change it up, disrupt it a little bit. So, for example, we came up with an idea to get 3,000 school children in underdeprived areas from Glasgow in to watch one of our practice sessions on the Wednesday. So we had like a 9,000 seater stadium. It was amazing. We got 3,000 of these kids in, and we did a practice session. We did some fun stuff. We're hitting tennis balls into the crowd. They had the cats. We got free T-shirts. They got flags. They got. It was brilliant. And the players, we had not done that before. And a sense of pride of giving back from the players involved in that was amazing. Kids were screaming. I was so happy. And so you have to find other ways. If you sense something, it's just having a radar up to what can we do here, and giving back to a community is definitely something that gives that sense of togetherness and pride again.
Yeah. So if you feel the dip, and you can feel it, can't you? Sometimes you can feel like this is coming, and you can feel it when you're in business. Like there's a team that's been amazing, but is a bit maybe tired out, or something's not quite right, or a project isn't going so well. And it's about, you have to do something to disrupt it rather than let it fester or let it continue on.
Yeah.
And great example there of actually giving back and reminding people how much fun it is, and how it's something that, sport is an amazing thing for drawing communities together and making kids happy and all of that amazing stuff. I could honestly, Leon, talk to you for hours and hours more and pick your brain on how to be an awesome leader forever. But what I'd love to finish off with, if it's okay, is to ask you some quick fire questions.
Okay, I better
And
get
just to
active and get my brain ready for this. I'm
gotta
ready.
get active, get your brain ready,
I'm ready.
And I'm gonna hit you a tennis ball. But as you know, you've seen my tennis skills are not that good, so it's probably gonna go off in some random direction. So first question, for you personally, what is always guaranteed to bring you some joy at work?
The people around me, energy and energize people around me.
Great. So totally within your theory, your principles, how you work is bring the energy and people around you who can make that happen. Love it. What book are you currently reading, or would you recommend to our listeners?
That's a good question. I'm not actually much of a book reader. Okay, so I'm more podcast based. However, what I have started doing in the last 6 or 8 weeks as part of a development program I'm on myself, the person that's mentoring me has got me every weekend buying the weekend edition of the Financial Times, and I'm actually really enjoying it. So I'm spending my weekends doing that, and then coming back into work with all these amazing different viewpoints and stories that people don't understand how I'm coming out with them. So if people aren't getting the Financial Times weekend edition, I recommend it.
Give it a go, and something different to maybe what you would usually read.
Very different. I mean, it's not scripted in financial world. It's everything from climate change to running a business through pandemic to lifestyle, anything. It's brilliant. It's wide, varied read that I wouldn't normally delve into.
Brilliant. And as you're into the podcast, what podcast would you recommend?
It depends what people's tastes are. Mine are still in the human performance, or like I love football, so I listen to any podcast that's got football on it. And if you've not, and if I can persuade people to slightly dive into tennis, then check out the tennis podcast. Is probably one of my go-tos.
Brilliant. Next question is, what's the best or most useful bit of advice that you've had in your career, in life, it doesn't have to be career-based, that you always come back to help guide you in situations?
I can answer that quickly. Surround yourself with positive people. So it's still in line with what I talk about. Judy Murray told me that a long time ago when I worked with her in Scotland on the tennis program, the national program there, and I've kept it ever since. So I'm always aware of who I surround myself with.
And such great advice when you're thinking about how do you build a squad around you, is the positive people will help make that happen.
Yeah, it is. And also just on that, I mean, I really, it's amazing. You can have 8 energized people, and you have that one energy sapper. It can stop you in your tracks. It really can. And so I'm always aware of just surround with positive, energized people.
And not the mood hoovers.
No, thanks.
Right, final question for me. What is one really practical bit of advice that you could give our listeners? Something that they could maybe just go and do really simply, nothing too complicated, that they could do today, tomorrow, the next day, that you think would help bring them more joy in their work, whatever their work may be?
That's a good question. I mean, you could do this either yourself, but maybe even more enjoyable with a team, maybe, is sometimes, I mean, everyone does these sort of checkpoints, review points and whatnot, but I I do it a lot because everything moves with such pace that I'll get together with my team that I work with, national coaches, and we'll just very openly have 3 questions that we reflect on, and that is, what are we doing well as a team?
Yeah.
What are we finding either challenging or frustrating as a team? And then the third one is, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about these things? And I like it. I've tried to do it more and more. I think it's, I'm finding things, life's always like that, but the things change so quickly. We didn't know what's happening with the pandemic, so it changes things like your resource and what you can allocate from your resources and who's doing what. So, and everyone's circumstances, situations change. That it's good to just check. And I like those 3 questions. So I think that's a good starting point.
Great 3 questions, and that kind of reflection on where you are, understanding what's good, what you need to work on. But most importantly, and I love the last part because I'm all about the action, is what are you actually going to do about it? So we don't just get stuck into that discussion and debate side of things. You actually get on to doing something to make it better, improve it, to keep it working in the way you need it to work. So great to have that action one there. Leon, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation, and your philosophy, how you think about things, your methodology, whichever one you want to call it, I think it's a great way. And always remember that human first factor, and then move into the performance and the playing and make it happen. Such great advice for everybody. Before we finish off, where can people find out more about you? Is there anywhere they can follow you and see what you're up to?
I'm on Twitter. I wouldn't say I'm the most active across Twitter or Instagram, more on Twitter. If people want to search me, they'll certainly find me on there. I really am not one for posting or showcasing much what I'm doing, but if you go on Twitter, you'll get a flavour of what I'm up to on a sort of weekly basis. Otherwise, I'm on a tennis court, near a tennis court, or talking about tennis.
So get on to watching some tennis, and we'll see you on the sidelines cheering everyone on.
I'll pop up somewhere.
Leon, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fantastic, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Thanks very much, Beth. I really enjoyed it, and good luck with everything.
Thanks very much, Leon. Thank you for listening to that conversation with Leon. I know there's so many great bits of nuggets and advice to take away there. I found it hard to pick one thing for today's episode, but I just think this idea that getting the right characters in to help make the support team really work in whatever you're doing, making sure the environment has some fun, making sure it's motivational, making sure it's got some energy behind it. And I really love this idea that those people can be both hired for their technical brilliance at what they do, but also the attitude, the energy that they bring to the team as well. And such an important thing to think about when we're pulling teams together, when we want to achieve great things. And great advice from someone who's been there, done it, built a team and made it so successful. Thank you very much for listening to the WorkJoy Jam podcast today. There are other episodes available, so do go and have a listen. There's lots of different people with different expertise, different perspectives, different backgrounds, and I hope there'll be something in there to inspire you. We would love to hear what you're doing, so do let us know either on LinkedIn or on Instagram. Both of them are at Create WorkJoy. Tell us what you're doing. What inspiration have you taken? What actions are you taking away to create and cultivate more joy in your personal working life?